Welcome to this meeting of Derbyshire District Council Planning Committee held here in the Town Hall on Tuesday 10th December. Just by way of introductions, my name is Councillor Peter O'Brien. I represent the Hathersage area on the District Council. With me here, our Vice Chair is Councillor Sue Burfoot on my right. We've got Kerry France, our Legal Services Manager. On my left, we've got Lucy Harrison, who's now the team leader of the Democratic Services team, who's looking after administration of the council. We've got Sean Robson, our Development Manager, and Miles Joyce, one of our Principal Planning Officers on the table here. There's no fire alarm planned for this evening, so if you do hear the alarm go off, please make your way as swiftly as possible through the doors at the rear of the building, or alternatively through the doors on my left here. A special welcome to Councillor Helen Froggatt, who's recently, as we know, rejoined the council, attending her first meeting of this new administration's planning committee. So welcome, Helen. First item on the agenda, Lucy, is apologies for her absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Archer, Butcher, Lees, Murphy and Peacock. Here as substitute we have Councillor G, Gretrix and Shelley.
Thank you, Lucy, and welcome to all those who have kindly agreed to substitute this evening. Item 2, we need to approve the minutes of our previous meeting, which was held, whatever it says on here, I've forgotten precisely when it was. 12th November. Would someone like to move approval of those minutes?
I'll second them, Chair.
Right. Well, let's move the minutes. We've got to approve the minutes of the 12th of November first, please.
If Sue's going to move those, I'll second them. So I'll second them, thank you.
Those in favour of moving those minutes? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Now, Kerry, you were saying there's some other minutes we need to approve?
Yeah. I thought we'd two planning meetings.
Okay, sorry about that. Right, item 3 are interests. Any members like to declare any interests on the agenda this evening? Councillor Buttle?
Yeah, I've got to say that I'm actually not predetermined on this one, but I am predisposed against it because I'm not happy about the gas central heating which has been applied, and it seems like fossil fuels are something that we should be moving beyond and what have you. So I'd just like to say that I'm not entirely happy with this, but I'm going to take it, item by item and be fair-minded about it. But I have to say I'm not terribly happy before we start, and I don't know if that's the right way to go with this.
Do you want to tell us what application you're not happy about? Okay, that's noted.
Ashbourne Airfield, yeah, not keen on gas central heating rather than air source heat pumps, and I'm just not absolutely finding it really tricky to feel positive about it before we start. But I'm not saying I'm going to not vote for it, because there's lots of other nice things about the plan.
Councillor Gretrix.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to declare a non-pecuniary interest regarding application 523, change of use from self-storage facility to car showroom, simply and purely because I know the applicant as a member of the community in my ward.
Thank you very much. That's noted. Councillor Slack.
Exactly the same, Chair. Item 5.3, I know the applicant, but it's a non-peculiar interest.
And Councillor G.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point just to help Councillor Buttle and take some advice, because I don't think the issue that he's got is really an interest, is it? I'm not sure. That's just something technical detail about the
Yeah,
actual application.
he's indicated that he's predisposed on that particular application. Right, we're now moving on to consideration of the applications we've got before us. That's the three of them. And our first application is the application at Ashbourne Airfield, which is in Yeldersley. This is the Reserve Matters application for 297 dwelling houses with details of the access infrastructure and all the landscaping. This is a Reserve Matters application following the approval of a previous hybrid planning application which was submitted back in 2019. Probably one of the more important or most important applications that the council has considered for some time, so it does merit our full deliberation here this evening. With two speakers on this application. First we have Councillor Nick Wilton, who is a local member, is here to speak on behalf of local residents. Nick, you've got 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here as a councillor, but as a local and a neighbour, and by no means a NIMBY for this. I wanted to develop this right and together, and to make most of what has been proposed, not just as part of Phase 1, but of Phase 2 as well. We need to make this a success. We're seeing the Section 106 being agreed values, but they need to be thought about holistically across the system around there. So they need to engage the local schools, whether that's Osbaston and the Hilltop, because at the moment Osbaston doesn't have the space to expand. I know we have the money, but we don't have how that's going to turn into something as well. We also need to consider how the football, a local group, the football club, have basically got funding for a 3BG pitch and a potential stadium. The needs of the wider town need to be brought in to support the aspiration of this development opportunity, or it will be lost here because they will go to other areas to deliver that output. Also, we have local landowners as well, such as JC Archers, not contacted or bought in to understand the change in the water flow and the impact that they're going to have from the input into their land. So this will damage potentially the land at Ladyhole Farm, which is described as ridge and furrow and part of one of the contingencies within the planning application. I believe members have viewed this yesterday, and whilst there's been a lot of rain, this is the new normal, and it will only increase with global warming impacts. The farm and other neighbours need to be part of our key stakeholders to keep and deliver a sustainable project. Flooding is a concern not just at the top of Ashbourne, but also in the region and the wider Ashbourne. Elsewhere, we're seeing footage each year now of floating cars down on Wyreston Road, and that's going to be an impact from the top of the hill because it runs downhill. That's one local landowner and one issue from the area, so you need to bring in all of those local landowners, and I don't feel that currently is. The Phase 2 integration with Phase 1, we need to allow the full scope to be met, and I think a lot of local concern around this will interact with the benefit of the local area. We need to know that these 297 are going to happen, but we need to know that that's going to happen without the detriment of losing the 1,000 more, because I think it's really important for the local plan as much as anything else that we don't end up forcing a land banking of that, and I'm concerned by that. We also need to consider, and I ask that members consider, JCB as well, the access that they currently have across that land. It hasn't been cut out, and we're not sure if that's going to happen in Phase 1 and 2. Early planning applications did rule out the access onto Ladyhole Lane. This is the access for the old training ground, but it's still in a lot of diagrams. Is this being removed, or what's going to happen with it? It's still not clear. And again, that just makes uncertainty for locals. Ladyhole Lane also needs to remove the opportunity for parking as well, because as you'll see when you look through some of the diagrams, there's a lot of fencing that runs up to in the ends of people's gardens, and people will just park on the roads there. How is that going to be managed? This is a 24/7 farming access road that will be used constantly, and I see big tractors going up and down it all the time. To have a single track road like that being filled with cars could end in disaster for locals. All of this is not to stop this, it's to add and make a thriving community. It was an empty airfield, and it wasn't giving Ashbourne its most and surrounding communities. We need a joined-up plan for all of these works, and brings all local people and stakeholders into the development for locals to live with and make the delivery of the new estates easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for that. Our next speaker on this is the agent, Sarah Willis. Sarah, you also have 5 minutes to address committee.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Sarah Wills of 1947, who are acting as the agent on behalf of the applicants, FW Harrison Estates Limited and David Wilson Homes, East Midlands. The site is allocated for strategic housing in the adopted local plan. This application seeks reserved matters consent for the erection of 297 dwellings with associated access, infrastructure and landscaping, pursuant to the hybrid permission which was granted in 2020 and established the principle of development. The scheme delivers 10.7% affordable housing and significant financial contributions as part of the previous outline and Section 106 agreement. The proposed development has been revisited since 2 previous refusals to drive a whole-scale change from the previous scheme. As detailed in the Design and Access Statement and in an independently prepared Building for Healthy Life review, the updated proposals have been underpinned by significant work from our client to ensure the application fully addresses all the concerns highlighted from the previous reserved matters refusal. Updated technical information has shifted the fundamental design principles for the development, which has allowed for a new and wholly appropriate scheme responding positively to the character and context of the site. The application has also been presented to Design Review Panel, who have commended the design approach. Following the recommendations of the panel, as well as those provided by statutory consultees, our client has adopted a responsive approach to address the feedback received. Importantly, the scheme presented today scores very highly against the Building for Healthy Life criteria. It has also been demonstrated that the proposed development will not prejudice the delivery across the balance of the strategic allocation. The scheme responds positively to the historic layout of the former airfield through the retention of the former runway corridor, which will create a high-quality linear area of public open space with heritage-inspired play opportunities and a site-wide response to ecological mitigation. The development has also prioritised both highway and pedestrian safety alongside sustainable travel measures. In terms of sustainability, the application is supported by an energy sustainability report which outlines the use of low and zero carbon technologies employed across the site. In addition, all new homes will include a 7 kilowatt electric vehicle charging point. The main street will be lined with mature trees and due regard has been given to the biodiversity of the site, with the scheme delivering new green infrastructure and habitat corridors, which Derbyshire Wildlife Trust have been consulted on and support. The scheme has been designed to drain to 2 attenuation ponds. The proposals do not exceed the design capacity of the existing pond. The design of the northern pond and outfall ensures the rate water discharges to the watercourse is limited to calculated greenfield runoff rates. In essence, the calculations match the rate of water discharge from the new development to the calculated rate of runoff in the land's undeveloped state. The calculations assume a 1 in 100 year storm with a 40% allowance for climate change. Consultation with the LLFA throughout the application process has informed the current designs, and they will be further scrutinised at condition discharge stage and before any development can commence. As a result of our client's commitment to the site, members will note that the application is presented to committee with no technical consultee objections and has been recommended for approval by the planning officer. This follows a comprehensive period of proactive engagement between our client and the local authority since its submission. The site is deliverable and will provide much needed high quality housing options that will significantly contribute to the council's housing land supply. We'd like to thank the officers for their hard work over the last 7 months, and I would urge members to take their decision making with recognition to the assessment and positive recommendation set out in the officer report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. I apologise for slightly mispronouncing your surname there. Right, before we move on to questions, I'm going to ask Sean Robson, our Development Manager, to introduce this application. Sean, perhaps you could respond to some of the points made by Councillor Wilson and also explain to members and to the public how this application dovetails with the master plan, which is proceeding in parallel with the planning application process. Sean.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I can just draw members' attention before I jump into those points to the addendum, which just clarifies one of the paragraphs worded within the report, specifically paragraph 7.43. It's just a correction or clarification of the wording. It relates to the proposal and how that complies with the requirement for bird boxes. My apologies. And now, as is worded at this moment in time, and as it's been published, it would sort of suggest it is not in compliance with the hybrid condition imposed. That, in fact, is not the case. It does fully comply and is fully compliant with condition 15 of the hybrid application. That's 2019-01274/full. With regard to the questions that have been raised, just in terms of the comments raised by Councillor Wilson, in terms of the provisions and requirements and monies going into the current 106, that is actually fixed. That was fixed at the outline stage. So therefore, those contributions are going towards the representative elements and areas such as, just forgive me, there's a large amount going towards education, which the Education Board at the County Council will distribute as they are aware where there's needs and requirements. There's contributions towards highway improvements, a travel plan cost, an amount towards a bus service provision, some compensatory land for lapwings and an education contribution. So those elements within the 106 are fixed. In terms of the integration and or further development of what was mentioned, phase 2, that is subject, as Councillor O'Brien mentioned, as to the master plan, which is still ongoing. The council is actively engaged with a number of landowners on this particular element. There have been a number of updates to members in terms of the progression of the master plan, and it's been made clear by the consultants acting on behalf of the authority how this application dovetails in and doesn't prejudice the master plan, that it runs in comparative movement towards it and with it. And also, just for further clarification on that point to do with the master plan, condition number 3 of the hybrid application, which relates to this development or the residential element of this phase 1 or phase 1A coming forward in advance of the master plan. Those details have already been considered by the authority and have been discharged. They were discharged on the 19th of the 1st, 2022. Therefore, the application is fully in compliance with the master plan requirements and how that master plan will move forward. So effectively, there is no rub or conflict with condition number 3 of the hybrid application. That has been satisfied. The remaining elements, remaining phases, are those that are still to be considered as part of the master planning process. Thank you, Chair. I think that was it. Thank you.
Sean, would you like to explain to members how the application has been taken through a design review process? Because I suspect that not many members are familiar with that process.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With the agreement of the applicants, the authority chose to, and it did in the previous application, engage the services of a design review panel, which basically is a panel made up of a number of experts within the field, urban designers, people to do with buildings for healthy life and so forth. And the applicant had an opportunity to, or chose to, and engaged and presented the application to that actual panel. The panel convened, heard the ins and outs of the application. There was a brief presentation from the officers, myself, and the local plan manager. The applicants presented the case. There was quite a lengthy roundtable discussion and discussions on a number of points about it. The design review panel then went away and came back with a number of suggestions and ratifications on the application, and pointing out where there could perhaps be, or suggestions where there perhaps could be alterations made in the scheme. Those points were taken on board by the applicant, and that was the process. That was what was resulted in a further reconsultation exercise on the application, which has been ultimately led to the application in front of members this evening.
Thank you, Sean. Questions from members? I think, David, you wanted?
Thank you, Chair. How many questions am I allowed?
Sorry, I apologise. That was clarification. The presentation now from Sean.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I got a little bit carried away on that point. So if I can draw members' attention to the screen and to the A3 sheet of paper in front of members. This basically, the A3 sheet of paper in front of members points to the 3D visual models that are being provided by the applicants, just to give the members a better interpretation of how the site will look, rather than me running through the numerous house types, which in a 2D format wouldn't necessarily give a feel for the actual site or the end product that I'm asking members to consider. So if I can draw members' attention to the screen, this is the application site outlined in purple. The smaller area to the right of the screen as I'm looking at it is the attenuation pond. That's the second pond that was mentioned by the applicant. There already is an attenuation pond on the site, which is immediately to the south of the application site. So this slide just illustrates what members have got in front of them at the moment, which is, for illustrative purposes, is the site layout, and the little black arrows indicate the visuals, which I'm going to move on to next. So we've got visual viewpoint 1, which indicates the access point, the main access point to the site from Harrison Way. So this is how the site, once built out, will appear. Number 2 is effectively, viewpoint 2 is taken from a little bit further back along Harrison Way, closer to the roundabout, so you get a view across the actual corner of the site and into the site. 3 is the opposite angle to viewpoint 1, so again looking from Harrison Way, but the opposite direction, with the industrial units further in the site behind you. And viewpoint 4 is looking along the frontage along Harrison Way, so the footpath that runs along the frontage and cycleway. That to the right of the screen is Harrison Way. And number 5, again, as it's moving further into the site along Harrison Way, off Harrison Way, apologies. And this is the actual vista looking down the main access road to the actual site, which opens up, and the spurs ring off to the various elements and key areas, unique areas within the site. Again, this is what a photograph, illustrative purposes, taken further up on the site, looking down, as you can see, the tree-lined avenue. Number 8, again, the house type along the main access road. And if I'll just go through the various points, number 10, as you can see, of one of the feeder roads onto the main access road. Number 11, a little bit further, but again, you can see the trees and the proposed planting along the site. Number 12 is just taken a little bit further in depth, and this is basically the area that leads on to, sorry, that's number 11. Number 12 is the area that's effectively crosses where the green wedge is. Now, when I say the green wedge or the green area, that's the area members will recall from the site visit, which is currently the airfield, the runway, sorry. And number 13 is looking back towards the road that leads on to Harrison Way. So again, part of the element of the green area, green space. These next 2 viewpoints, 14 and 15, illustrate the actual, currently is the runway, but as it will be developed by the applicant to form this green backbone, the green wedge that runs along the site. And again, the 3-storey properties as part of the proposal that will frame that green wedge running through along the backbone of the site. And number 16, if you bear with me, is looking towards the northwestern end of the site, looking back into the site at the depth. So as you can see, the trees towards the bottom of the screen, that's towards the end of the perimeter of the actual site. So you're looking back along the actual green wedge where the runway was. As you can see, there's an area, a equipped area of space there, and there is the planting and so forth, and sculptures that basically pay credence to the actual use, former use of the actual airfield itself. And number 17 is looking back from outside of the actual site, toward the very rear of the site, looking back into the site. So as you can see, the turning head there that serves the properties on the rear edge of the site. And number 18 is looking towards the southeastern end of the site. Again, 19, some more of the units on the site. Number 20 is looking outside of the site from Ladyhole Lane. You can see the properties that aren't coloured up are those properties that exist currently on Ladyhole Lane. So you can see how this element of the site interacts and adheres to the built form along Ladyhole Lane. And just finally, viewpoint number 21, which is looking back into the site from Ladyhole Lane. And there's the reference there just to the historical relevance of the actual site. Those are the slides, Chair. If I can just draw members' attention, I'll just go through my brief presentation. A lot of these points have been covered already by the applicant's presentation. It's worthwhile saying that the development itself will develop or ties into the existing Section 106, which does bring forward a considerable amount of contributions. The site itself is the proposal in front of members. The housing mix comprises of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom units within the built form of 2, 2.5 storey, but there are elements of 3 and single storey units within the site. The breakdown that's contained within the report, effectively 1 bedroom units, there are 14 of those, 2 bed units, 50 of those, 3 bed units, 112 of those units, 4 bedroom units is 97, and 5 bedroom units is 24 units within the site. The affordable housing units will be mixed throughout the site, or the proportion amount will be mixed throughout the site. And as I briefly mentioned, the actual site itself is going to be broken into 5 key areas. There's the area running through the middle of the site, which is Harrison Way. Sorry, Harrison Way is the element that fronts onto Harrison Way itself. The Greenway, which links from Harrison Way into the site, that's the main thoroughfare. The runway, it's quite self-explanatory, the area that basically bounds the former runway. And the remaining part of the site is the internal area. So the density throughout the site, as mentioned in the report, does vary to create these very key areas, these 5 key areas throughout the site. So it ranges from a density of 21 units per hectare all the way through to 35 and then to 42 units per hectare. So this creates a thorough housing mix throughout the site, which officers consider as appropriate in this instance, and something that was sadly lacking on the previous application. This is a significant improvement on that. And I think it goes on to say, or a way of a conclusion, that this application does represent an improvement of the previous application, which was refused. The 4 reasons for refusal have been addressed, and the recommendation is therefore recommended for approval in front of members this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. I hope members found that's helpful. We move on to questions. David, if you could try to keep your questions within 3, if you can, please.
Okay, and the question I've already asked isn't counted, I hope. Thank you very much. I will try. I will do, in fact. So the first, I was going to ask a question about the master plan, but I won't. I'll email Sean instead about that one. The second question was about housing mix. And our local plan, SO7, says it needs to meet, the housing plan needs to meet objectively assessed housing needs of the district. And SO8 says to ensure that there is an adequate mix of housing type, size and tenure to meet the needs of all sectors of the community. And policy HC4 reminds us that there was a needs assessment was carried out in 2015, said that 100 affordable houses a year were needed. And that needs assessment was repeated for the new local plan and it's still around 70 odd houses a year under the new, in the new needs assessment. That's a year. So 297 houses represents about 1 year's delivery of housing at the moment in the district. And we're getting, how many houses are we getting? 32 affordable houses. So that's about a little over 10%. So that we're a bit short by 70 houses. And not only that, 40% of the houses are going to be 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms. And I might refer you to an article in today's Daily Mail, that August newspaper, which says that there's a housing needs problem in Derbyshire Dales, which is one of the more significant housing needs in the country, with the requirement is about the ratio between mean house price and median incomes is over 11. So houses are 11 times the cost of the median income, and yet we still have 4 and 5 bedroom houses. Now the question I have is, does 40% of the housing at 4 and 5 bedrooms represent the need under SO7 in this community? I suggest that it is no way meeting that need, and it may meet the need of Derby and the professional classes in Derby, but where are the professional classes in Ashbourne or elsewhere in Derbyshire Dales that will meet the that will buy those houses? All that we're doing is adding more people coming into Derbyshire Dales to buy very pretty houses in a beautiful environment. We're not meeting the need of our local communities if we agree this proposal, and which should have been assessed by the developer. That's my first question. So how can you relate the housing mix to SO7 and SO8 in the local plan?
Can we take that question first, please, Sean? Clearly a very relevant one, I'm sure of concern to all members. You can make a point of order.
Yeah, just a point of order. Rather than sort of something that comes in debate, because it could turn into like a speech rather than a question.
Councillor G, I did interpret that as a question, the context for the question.
Right, but I'd just like to make that point.
Yes, sorry, if I come back on that, the second, obviously, question that you've asked, Councillor Hughes. In terms of the housing mix and the requirement, obviously, in terms of the first point you mentioned about the affordable housing, it's 10.7 that's been delivered on this particular site. That was something that was secured as part of the outline consent, so obviously that is fixed. That was deemed appropriate at that point, and obviously as part of this proposal, that is something that has to be pulled through, and it has been by the applicant. In terms of the actual mix itself, when that was looked at, for example, the previous application, the mix in there was not a million miles away from this. I mean, there were marked differences. However, at the time, that was assessed and deemed appropriate. In this particular instance, housing officers have been consulted. Now, admittedly, they haven't formally come back, but the option is that, or as it's been, I've been led to believe by them, that this mix is appropriate for the particular area in question. When I've assessed it, looking at this and against the actual policies of the plan itself, doesn't raise any issue with any conflict or anything adverse to those policies. Thank you.
I won't come back because I think it's quite clear that 4 and 5 bedroom houses are a surface of 4 or 5 bedroom houses on this development, but I'm not going to return and ask a supplementary on that because I think it's self-evident. 2 other questions. One is about solar panels. We saw a very nice presentation of the housing, and it looks very nice housing. I'm not going to quibble about that. It looks extremely nice. Detached houses, 4 or 5 bedroom mainly, or 40%. Lots of pictures with the sun on the roof. No solar panels. Where are the solar panels that we've been asked for? How many kilowatt of solar panels are there on each house?
Through you, Chair. If I can draw members' attention to paragraph 5.5, page 40 of the agenda. As you can see there, the application itself and the low and zero carbon technologies report that came in support of the application does clearly identify, as reflected in the report, that the developments, the dwellings, will have panels attached to their roofs.
But how many kilowatts, Sean?
Apologies, Chair. I haven't actually reflected it in the report, but there isn't a planning requirement to deliver a threshold on that. So just to be clear, there is no guidelines at this stage that we have in our local plan that says what each house has to provide or cater for.
Okay, so the next question, thank you for that response. The next question is, they talk about having gas central heating, and they talk about heat recovery from the flues. Is that, this isn't really a question, but is it a condensing boiler? Is that a condensing boiler, or is it something else? But what I am asking is, heat pumps. Why aren't we conditioning heat pumps on this? Can we condition heat pumps on this?
Through you, Chair. Had that been part of the requirements as part of the hybrid application outline, then yes. But this isn't part of this. We cannot insist upon that as part of this Reserved Matters proposal. There is sufficient information and sufficient proposals put forward for each of those units. And on balance, that's what's considered to be appropriate in this instance by officers, myself.
But is it something that, as a committee, we can suggest a condition and that heat pumps are installed instead of gas central heating, given that the gas central heating is of limited life now that we're where we are in terms of climate change?
I mean, the report is as written. The proposal is in front of members as it is this evening. Therefore, the proposal itself as it stands does not include that.
And we can't condition it?
I would advise against it, but that's entirely up to members as part of the debate if they want to consider that. But I would strongly advise against that.
All right, thank you.
Just before I bring Councillor Slack in, Sean, could you just confirm then that the fact that since the hybrid application was approved, the councillors approved a supplementary planning document relating to climate change? Does that have no bearance on the consideration of this application?
Unfortunately, the decision and the principal decision considered in principle for the development of this site, the outline, our hybrid application, does post-date that. So as part of the document suite that we considered at the time, that was given principle to development, had that been adopted, then yes, that could have been part of the consideration, but it wasn't.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to David's point about central heating, the electric, gas central heating and electric. Would it be possible, Sean, to talk to the developer to give the residents who are buying these properties a chance to say, I'd sooner have electric, because it's mostly going to be more and more renewable energy, or a gas boiler? Because the price difference wouldn't be greatly. So would that be possible? Give the people a choice rather than say you're having a gas boiler. Why don't you give the people the choice? That's my first question. The other question, affordable housing. 10.7 is not too bad. We've had worse, but we could have better. But I'm not too keen on the mix. Where are the affordable housing going to be balled together, or are they going to be separated around the site? That's another question. Them two questions for a start, Sean.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. In terms of the first question about the option of a prospective buyer to ask for or spec up or ask for the change to the proposed heating system of the units, I mean, that's outside of the remit of this application in front of members. I mean, we're looking at the design of the properties, There is some elements put forward for low carbon, low emission elements on there. It would be straying outside of what I would advise members are considering this evening to actually ask for that. In terms of the second point about the affordable housing mix, the houses themselves, or sorry, the locations, those properties are mixed throughout the site. So there's the integration. It's not simply a case if you drive into site and there's a block of affordable units or element. It is interrelated, intermixed. And what the applicant has made it quite clear, the fenestrations of all the properties, there is a mix throughout the site, but there isn't a differentiation between the different forms or end products. So you wouldn't know.
You're right there. Just come back to you. Yeah, I think that's okay, fine. But I just wanted to, I know it's not in our remit, but just a suggestion put to the, if they'd consider it, because it'd give the prospective buyers more choice. That's what I'm looking for, more choice for the prospective buyer on whether to have gas central heating or solar panels and electric boilers. So it's just something we could just suggest. I wouldn't put it as a point to refuse it on, no, but just a suggestion, that's all. Thank you.
Do you want to bring that up in debate, Peter? Councillor Shelley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've spent quite a lot of time reading through a lot of the documentation, particularly the background stuff, and I appreciate there's a colossal amount of work that's gone on in the course of the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, this must be one of the longest standing applications this authority's had to deal with. And yet we were still trying to resolve questions, particularly around surface water drainage, as recently as the start of last month. Now, there's a, I think it's page 61 or 60 of the document, which, sorry, I don't have a paper copy, which is why I'm having to sort of flitter around all over the place on this. Maybe it's not even that. Here we go. Page 59, at the top, there's a very telling paragraph which is part of the conditions. The applicant should demonstrate to the satisfaction of the local planning authority, i.e. us, the appropriate level of treatment stages from the resultant surface water discharge. Now, it looks like that was still being resolved last month, and there's question marks about that from a local resident, from Osmaston and Yeldersley Parish Council, who seem very switched on when it comes to this issue, as indeed you would if you live very, very close to this. My question is really, given our experience with the inadequacy, and I have to say it, of the evidence from the lead local flood authority and other places, particularly Matlock and the experience here, can we rely on the answer which they've given? And part of it seems to revolve around the connectivity of a receiving ditch, and it's the assessment of its ability to accept flows up to the proposed discharge rate. It sounds very much like that ditch is a sort of ditch of last resort in case the overflow ponds don't work. Before we sign this off, I would like some assurance that the answer we've had from the LLFA is, can I use the word watertight, please?
Yes, through you, Chair, I'll come back to the Councillor on that point. I mean, I think what's clear, or did become quite clear from the outset on this particular application, it fundamentally differs from the previous application, which was refused, because there's a lot of extensive, as you mentioned already, information that came accompanying this application, and one of those elements was significant information to do with surface water runoff, drainage, and so forth. What is clear, and as part of the actual consideration of the application, when ourselves as the planning authority consulted the local lead flood authority, the county council, the initial comments weren't ideal. However, we did question them based on the validity of the information that had been submitted, the sheer raft of information. Had they wholly considered all that? We then got more comprehensive responses back, and based on that, and based on the proposed conditions as been mentioned here, this is quite a comprehensive response from the local lead foot authority. And I think that's basically as a direct response to the information that we asked them, or that came accompanying the application. Therefore, to answer your question, sorry, I've just skated around that a little bit. Yes, I mean, there is, I would say, more certainty on this comments that have come back from the LLFA than perhaps we have had in the past. And specifically when you mentioned about that form of wording, it's on page 59, that's one of the informatives. It's a standard informative that the LLFA do ask for. But I think if I draw your attention back to what exists at the moment in terms of those conditions on the hybrid application and those further conditions that are on this, following the receipt of that information and assessment of that information of the LLFA, I'm incredibly relaxed about what is being proposed, and the LLFA have considered at length what has been submitted to them, and they've come back and they haven't raised an issue with it. They've effectively agreed it's subject to those conditions.
Okay, just to follow up on that then, if I may, this is obviously, and this is the general inadequacy I find when we're dealing with a small section of what is going to be, many phases in the future. Do we have some sense of what the impact of the cumulative phases are likely to be on those watercourses as well? Because, it's not like we're going to be able to undo this after it's been done. We're not going to be able to probably improve those watercourses and runoff issues once phase 1 is there, and phase 1B and phase 2 cumulatively come along and add on top of that.
Yes, sir, through you, Chair. The proposal or the solution put forward from the applicant on this particular phase, phase 1A, does obviously adequately accommodate what's been proposed from the actual site itself. The LLFA, from my chat with them based on what may or may not come forward in the future and how that's going to be connected, possibly even using other forms of service, this attenuation pond, for example, and others, they have reassured me that obviously, at the end of the day, each application has its own individual merits, so they will be principally concerned about the cumulative effect. They know what has been proposed here. They know what the likely runoffs are from this proposal once it's fully built out. And therefore, that will be forefront in their minds when considering any future phases, as you mentioned, 1B, 1C, 2, 3, however it's numbered or however that's bagged up as the phases. So certainly there is, it is down to the LLFA, however, they will have that in mind when assessing those future proposals.
Does it, Roger? Yep.
Yes, we have to go by the assurances that we've got. It's part of my general concern, which might be moving into debate rather than a question. I appreciate that without the knowledge of what's going to come in successive phases, there are hanging questions. I could say the same about the active travel arrangements as well. It's all very well having cycleways and roads which are pedestrian and cycle friendly within the estate, but if you're a cyclist, once you get outside this box onto the A52, I'm right in thinking that the questions of pedestrian and cyclist safety no longer apply, do they?
Yes, through you, Chair, if I can come back on that point. Whilst it's obviously not for an extensive debate this evening on this particular point, the master plan itself that comes forward and so forth, part of that backbone running through that is interconnectivity for the actual development as a whole, the whole allocation, including this proposal this evening, to the built form of Ashbourne and how that connects and how those links are formed. And certainly, I know some members are aware of what discussions are ongoing on that particular element and how that is going to connect and interconnect. So the scenario I gave there, Councillor Shelley, about a cyclist coming out onto the A52, obviously we can't stop that. No authority can. However, there will be alternatives that could be used.
Councillor Buttle.
Thanks very much. this isn't the question, this is just David, page 17 of the planning document by environmental report on the energy environmental, I think they're called, has the actual quality and amount of kilowattage per house for the development, which is mediocre to quite good, depending on the size of the roof. Question. First off, when I look at that plan and I compare it with what I've got in my mind for the master plan, is the shopping centre and what have you at the very top, where there's supposedly all the various services and what have you? Where does this sit within the whole group, as it were? Is that something that's even relevant to our thoughts?
Through you, Chair. I mean, in short, that is a separate discussion or separate consideration that's ongoing. I mean, certainly the wider development, I mean, I don't want to get into too much of a debate on the master plan or the merits of the master plan itself or what's been proposed or those initial phases. I know there have been numerous workshops, a number of landowners, members of the public and members have been involved in that. There is a centre being proposed. There are other uses on that particular various other phases coming forward, one of those being a school. However, at this stage, and I think what the company that's producing the master plan on behalf of the authority have been keen to emphasise is that it's still quite fluid. Nothing's fixed yet until those elements come forward. But to answer your question, yes, there will be a centre.
Right.
But that's not within the remit or not within the actual parameters of this particular
Yeah, and that's not that centre for this development isn't actually in this bit that we've got.
That's correct, yes.
Right, gotcha. So is that why the active travel arrangement stuff is with the link with the master plan and what have you is also not set, and it's why the Active Travel England have not come back with the recommendation? That's page 28. I'm guessing that we're waiting for the master plan before Active Travel England can tell us what it is we're getting right or wrong.
Through you, Chair, if I can draw members' attention to page 32 of the agenda. The Active Travel England have come back on the 29th of October.
Oh, right. I've only got 67 pages.
Active Travel England, OIT, recommends approval of the application subject to the agreement and implementation of planning conditions as suggested, which is in the report.
Right, gotcha. I did have another question. It was about the Nick's mentioned, or I think it was Nick who mentioned, the suds and ridge and furrow in the surrounding areas. Would that be part of an archaeological protection, or how would we make sure that that was safe if we've got a ridge and furrow remnant in the local area and the suds are not going to damage it? Would we need to get a special suds assessment? Or, like how do we know about that?
I mean, that's outside of the parameter of this application and the allocation of the wider airfield site. When that was considered as part of the local plan, that wasn't identified and there wasn't an issue risen by that. I believe that there were some comments that were expressed at that stage, Councillor.
Right, I don't know if I've run out of questions.
You have, yes, you've had your three. Councillor G.
If someone wants to take me up on grey water, feel free.
Yeah, this is just a simple question. You know, with the situation with the affordable housing relaxed down to, is it 10% or 10.7? Do we sort of assume that that's sort of a quid pro quo in the fact that that allows the developer to come back with, obviously, the 106 funding, the improvements to development, which is better than it was before when it was not acceptable. And also it allows the developer to hopefully provide the market housing at a competitive price and also become more affordable and provide nice houses. So, you know, that relaxation rather than, you know, the usual 30% or it is a negotiation.
Through you, Chair, if I can come back on that as a scenario, I mean, basically the hybrid application was for the commercial element and this element of the residential. Any future phases coming forward, I mean, that will have to be considered. The starting point will always be 30%, that's within our local plan, unless there are other material considerations, other factors that basically, through that negotiation, as you mentioned, may well reduce that amount, or it may well be provisions off-site and so forth. In this instance, I mean, as part of the outline that was looked at, and because of the some of the other elements that are coming forward, some of the other contributions that are coming forward, there's a large amount going towards education as well as part of the overall 106. That was what was discussed and settled upon. But certainly, I think what you was alluding to there, Councillor, was when you get the issue about an urban development, so you get some market houses towards this. This is taken as a holistic approach at the development site itself. It includes an appropriate amount of affordable housing, which the authority considers to be acceptable, but also includes a variety of housing mix. And certainly from the palette that's been proposed, and as I saw some of the visuals, these are quite good quality. These are quality houses. So it's not quite the same as what I believe you was sort of alluded to.
No, I think it looks nice. This is what I'm alluding to, because the, the actual, I think you said, so how many per hectare? It's between 21 and...
It jumps between 21 and 42 on the different 5 key areas on the site.
I'm slightly old-fashioned, so I think of acres. So when you get hectares, it's hard to... but yeah, that's better, because if you've got more open space between the properties, the whole environment is much better, and that is a good thing.
I mean, just to add a little bit to that, I mean, certainly on some housing estates, you may just get a straightforward, that authority may well ask for just a straightforward per hectare, and that will be it. Whereas this obviously does offer that variety to create that, it does look more like an organic form, an organic development of the site, which is one of the words or one of the elements that I think the design review panel picked up on as well, that you have these key areas, and you have the runway that's actually creates almost like a picture frame looking down the runway of the site, and then obviously as it dissipates out, the density comes a little bit higher. Then you've got other more dense areas as well, so it does add that variety, for want of a better word.
And will aeroplanes still be able to land on the runway?
I truly hope not for the residents, yes.
Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a fairly simple question. It was raised by Yeldersley and Osmondson Parish Council. It's about the link to Lady Hole Lane. If you look on the plan that you kindly supplied us with, it's basically where sticker 21 is on various incarnations of the map. It looks like the pedestrian access through the green bit in the middle, the runway, looks like it does, or sort of could. Does it now in the final version link for pedestrians and cyclists to Lady Hole Lane?
Yes, it does, Councillor, basically. Unfortunately, you're quite correct. My apologies. The sticker 21 or the visual viewpoint is over where that link comes through.
Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. It's clear that landscaping is an important element of the scheme and quite integral to that. But I noticed in the report that there isn't a landscape buffer to the rear of properties on Lady Hole Lane. Can I ask Sean whether we asked for that?
No, we didn't. I mean, there already is some planting down there. If I can just go to the visuals. Already is planting down there. I mean, it's difficult to see from this area here. There will be boundary features and means of enclosure along there, but certainly the landscape, the primary beefed up, as it were, landscape is along the frontage along Lady Hole Lane to replicate the units down there. I mean, there isn't. I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about this area to the bottom left. Yes. Yeah.
Look, come back to you, Chair. It seems as though that was it was implied that we may have asked for that, and it's not going to happen. But is that not the case? And are we happy that there isn't to be that buffer?
I mean, in short, it was part of the overall, I believe, previous discussions on the actual application, the previous one. On this particular one, given the actual, as the form is, and taking the site as a whole, it was deemed what was proposed is more than acceptable. Councillor.
Any further questions, colleagues? I'm going to ask a couple of questions myself, Sean. First one is looking at, can you find points 12 and 13 on the screen? Yeah, this is looking at the points where on the what's been called the green wedge, the green corridor, where the main access routes, pedestrian vehicle access routes, cross the green space. Looks a little bit austere to me. Very nice landscaping, but I don't see much of interest for pedestrians to be able to stop and just intermingle, if you like, as an interactive place there. Would you suggest that could be made rather more interesting for people within the community to act as rather more of a meeting place? Do you think that would be an appropriate improvement?
To come back to you, Chair, as part of what was originally the first iteration of this to the design and review panel, that was discussed at length, and this is one of the points that came forward, and how this interacts and the ability to have informal areas and points through there, as well as the open spaces at effectively either end of the site and then the path that runs through. There are small areas and elements where people can have that interaction in that space, but certainly walking along there and how that's been flipped across, as it were, to what it was previously in terms of the footpath and cycleways, that was what was one of the key things that was discussed at length as part of the design review panel.
That's good. There's just I don't see any seating or that people normally like to sit for 5 minutes, but just a point there.
So there is seating provided throughout the actual, effectively what is the runway area as well, which is entitled the runway, which is literally just off the proposal as it is now.
That's good to hear. My second question relates to essentially to phasing and some of the conditions. It's a nearly 300 unit development, which is going to take probably five plus years to build out at the rates put forward by the developers. We've got a play area up at point 16, and we've got this landscaping element, key landscaping element. Is it conditioned that the landscaping and the play area up at 16, is it conditioned that those should be completed prior to first occupation of any of the dwellings, or are they going to be left until the whole development is completed? I would be concerned if, for example, the play area is not going to be provided until the 297th unit is completed and occupied.
Sorry, Judge, I need to refer back to the hybrid application. One moment, please. Chair, through you, it's not there. However, we can ask for that, just for clarification of that one that's going to be brought forward.
Okay, that's helpful. I suppose my question is, do you think, if you like, a landscape phasing plan would be helpful to condition?
Yes, Chair, that would be something we could add.
Right. Any further questions? Councillor Burton, yes.
Just out of interest from your question, Peter, who actually then maintains the public open spaces?
Sorry, through you, Chair, that the management company.
Councillor Slack, you wanted to come back.
Just one question, Chair. Looking at the site, there's a lot of sites around this development developed by others. What are they exactly? Any plans for what are these shopping centres or sports centres or?
I mean, those will be part of the consideration for those phases that come forward. I mean, the overall hybrid application requires certain amounts or proportion and floor space of developments to come forward. Schools, shopping centres, and there was a pub in there as well, and there's some shops. But that will come forward as
later
other phases. But at this stage, I can't confirm that.
No, but it's good as they're there. Waiting. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Gretrix.
Yeah, so just a quick question. How many Swift boxes did you say we're going to have?
Yes, sorry, through you, Chair. Apologies for referring to my... it says part of the addendum, it's actually the provision of 40 Swift boxes and 15 standard boxes have been secured as part of the original hybrid application, which will be pulled through to this phase.
So will more be done on this application?
No, that's also required as part of this application. Now, any future developments, that will have to be looked at individually, any future phases.
Right, it's just that pro rata out of 297 houses, it does seem rather low.
I understand where you come from at that point, Councillor. However, this is part of the condition that relates to the outline of the hybrid application, therefore it is fixed, I'm afraid.
Councillor G, you wanted to come back.
Yeah. Councillor David Burton has brought this up in my mind, actually, because with the after this development is completed and the common areas, as you discussed, are then done by a management company, will it be the case that the common areas are wholly owned by the owners of the properties and they have some control over the management company to prevent the possibility of, in the future, a rogue management company sort of overcharging them? Because I've seen experience of this before where the common areas are passed on, the owners are allowed to be part of the management company, as in the director of, and they can have control over the balance sheet and the charges. Is that the way that it'll be operated?
Through you, Chair. I mean, I can't add anything to that, Councillor. I mean, it's certainly a lot of the actual management companies I'm aware of do operate quite an ethical response to elements of this nature. I know you mentioned there are some rogue elements out there. There are rogue elements, I'm afraid, in every walk of life. However, on this particular case, it's how it generally works, and forgive me, I can only relate to a recent company I was involved with maintenance of an unadopted but adoptable standard highway, and that was each residence. In this particular case, it was a sustainable urban extension. There was 3,000 properties, and each one of them had a percentage of that particular road or state road that ran through the site. So they upkeep every year to make sure that was actually maintained and ran.
Councillor Boynton.
Thank you, Chair. I notice comments from Derbyshire Constabulary refer to a number of elements impacting on crime and disorder on the development. which have asked to be removed. I wonder if they're still in there and what actually those items are, if they're still there.
Yes, through you, Chair. That related to the initial comments that they submitted, the Derbyshire Constabulary submitted, for whatever reason didn't appear, well, the authority didn't receive, therefore the applicants weren't made aware of those points. As part of the application going through the Urban Design Review Panel, it looked at surveillance, observation, design, all of the elements within there that would normally fall in old money would have fallen down to secured by design, those type of elements. That was considered holistically as part of the design review panel, and how that was brought forward. Now, when the Derbyshire Constabulary were consulted on the revised scheme, the scheme that's in front of members this evening, they came back with those comments, and it related to surveillance on one particular or perceived lack of surveillance on a particular element of the road or curvature in the road, but there were properties that were overlooking this, and it was something that certainly it is felt, and is felt, that the existence of those properties removed that element.
Okay, so
those elements...
It has been addressed, despite the comments, it's been addressed.
On balance, as it has, yes, that's a further recommendation.
Thank you, members. I think we've had a number of very searching and helpful questions there, which I'm sure both the applicants, their agents, and our planning officers have taken note. We need to move into debate now. We have a recommendation to approve the application subject to a large number of fairly complex conditions. To enable us to move into a debate, I need someone please to move a proposal. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I am willing to move this. We're in a very difficult place with this. I think we might have missed how this could have been optimised, but clearly the outline permission back in 2019, 19-01274, has fixed so many things that what I think a lot of people in Ashbourne might have anticipated from this phase one is not going to be delivered, and they're going to be disappointed. But we are where we are, as we often find ourselves, and I think the recommendation for this to go through is good. I reserve the right to come back and make some comments at the end. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Slack.
Yeah, I second this, Chair. This is a big improvement on what we had previously, and I think there's more good in it. There's some things I'm not too happy with, but mostly the layout and it's very, very good, really. Wide roads, side to side, it's good, and I think it's. Yeah, I'm not happy about the gas central heating, but it'll be ripped out eventually because it will be by the government control. But I'm pleased with it, really. It's lovely layout. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I was mulling whether to put my hand up to move or second this, and I found it very difficult to do that. I recognise the difficult position we're in. I wish we weren't there. Let's hope that in future we don't tie our hands behind our backs so we can't make changes. The houses look very nice. I'm sure it'll be a beautiful place to live. I commend the developer for the attractive drawings that he's produced, and I'm sure the layout will look very similar to that. In terms of layout, I worry a little bit about the corridor where the runway was, because it'll be fine unless the wind is blowing from the northwest or perhaps the southeast. I think northwest is more worrying, and I don't think I'd want to take children there to that play area in a northwesterly. But that's by the by. Housing mix. Sean, can we make sure that we get a better housing mix? I'm not talking about affordable housing here. I'm talking about a housing mix that meets the needs of Derbyshire Dale's people, not the needs of people from Derby, professional classes from Derby, who are going to commute out of the district. We should be meeting our own local need. and our local plan says that. Solar panels and heat pumps. So, yeah, there are solar panels. I can accept that flats are not going to have them, but 2 and 3 bedroom houses with 800 watts of nominal of solar panels. Now, nominal means that on a very bright summer's day, they will produce 400 watts each. On a cloudy summer's day, they may produce a third of that. I won't talk about now because our array isn't producing much electricity at the moment, today. But for 800 watts won't even light it'll light a modern light bulb, but it won't do very much more once you've taken out the inefficiencies in the inverter and other parts of the system. It's just not worth doing. The 4-bedroom houses have 1.2 or 2.4 litre, 1.2 or 1.4 kilowatts of panels, which is 3 or 4, isn't it? I don't know. Again, that's hardly worth having. Even the 5-bedroom houses only have 2.4, 3.6 kilowatts. And a 5-bedroom house should have a roof space that can deliver 4.8, possibly even more kilowatts. This is a sop to the planning regulations. It's not doing anything towards climate change. Most of it won't make any difference at all to the cost of of running the house or climate change. 800 watts is just not worth even contemplating. So while I like the overall approach to some extent, I'd like to see, I mean, the problem is the lack of the master plan rather than this particular development, I think. I am depressed by these details from competent and exclusive house builders, or David Wilson anyway. So I will be voting for it, but with these reservations.
Thank you, David. Councillor Gretrix.
Thank you, Chair. I do feel that new development is always very welcome, and that's why that I'm in favour of this. However, I do feel it's a shame there isn't more affordable housing.
Thank you, Dawn. Councillor Shelley.
Thank you. Not sure I agree wholeheartedly with that last statement. I don't think all new development is welcome, and this brings me back to my concern. I hope this isn't one of the last times that as councillors we're able to comment on applications like this. I hear ominous news from the government about how the quality of questions that you've had tonight might be no more, perhaps in a few months' time. So I would regret things very much if the level of scrutiny that we're able to provide on occasions like this is no more. But my particular point about this is that if we do have to have new development, it has to meet local needs, as has been suggested. But more importantly, with something of this scale, and it's part of a larger jigsaw, that the cumulative impact is made clear to residents and members before it happens. We've been told that there is a master plan process in train. It's just that many people, including myself, aren't really aware of what that's showing. So we don't know what the final impact of all of this is going to really be. And for people who are going to be subject to living here or living very, very close by, they won't see the benefits because the way the system is structured, the houses are built first before the infrastructure, if they are, ameliorations are put in place. So it's very, very hard to win people over to this idea of mass building without seeing the benefits first. I mean, that's all I want to say about it. I will be supporting it, but I think there are some fundamental issues with the way these kind of things are brought before us, and I just hope we still have the chance to scrutinise them in future. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Roger. Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this application. It's been a long time in the making. I too am disappointed at the number of 4 and 5 bedroomed houses that are being proposed. As Councillor Hughes says, it will mean, because of its close proximity to Derby, it will mean that people come live there, on this development, work in Derby. The local people are not going to be able to afford these 4 and 5 bedroom houses, and we've seen it in Matlock. It happens in all these big developments, and I think it's a sorry state of affairs that we end up in. But I did want to also just highlight landscaping, which to me, and I hope the developers agree, is a really important and integral part of this development. We've looked at the slides. We see large numbers of trees. We see green spaces, the so-called green wedge, which I've not heard that before, but anyway, the green wedge. I do trust that, or I hope that the developers will take on board that landscaping is a really important feature of this development, but what we want to see is that the landscaping is not seen as the afterthought. It's done at the appropriate time, and I hope as officers we will make sure that that does happen, because too often, and I've been on this planning committee quite a long time now, too often I've seen beautiful visuals and then it doesn't happen. It's kind of like an afterthought. We must not let that happen on this one. It's really important that that doesn't happen.
Councillor Burford, you're largely echoing my thoughts there. Are you suggesting that we should add an additional rider or condition such that what I would call we have a landscape phasing plan attached to the consent, to any consent, such that we don't have the landscaping left until the last occupation, and we also have the play area provided, which is probably the only community facility we're going to see in this development. That is provided early doors at the start of the development, so that young families do have somewhere to enjoy themselves. Are you suggesting that is added?
Yes, I'm happy with that, Chair, of the mover and seconder.
Was anyone not in favour of that? Okay. Councillor G.
Well, it isn't so much that I'm not in favour, but I just wanted to say, in looking at this development, I think it looks fabulous. And I think the balance of the houses, I haven't got a problem with it. I've seen a bad development in Derbyshire, because I can take you to Christ, and this one looks good to me. So, and I think we have to have some trust in development. I believe this company have got a good reputation. And the actual landscaping forms part of the overall plan. It comes with it when they're building the housing. So, I don't mind what you're suggesting, but I think this will be a bonus to Derbyshire. And don't forget, it's all right saying that people will move from Derby or wherever and come and live here, but the minute they do, they're Derbyshire residents, so we welcome them. And this is what provides a vibrant community, and it'll enhance Ashbourne. And, we've got a local plan where we've got targets to meet, and, a development like this looks great. So whether it's necessary to have this, I'm sure our officers have probably considered this, and it wouldn't be too much for the developers to consider, but on the whole, I'm very supportive of it.
Thanks, Gareth. Councillor Buttle.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not quite with Gareth on this, but there are some quite nice bits about it, aren't there? It's quite nice to have a nice pretend run down the runway when you're a kid. That sounds fun. I think it does actually have a slight feel of polluting for profit, I have to say. And I'm considering whether or not we should be asking for grey water systems, because their current framework is for 110 litres per day. And I'm not sure, but I thought the latest targets were 90 litres per day for the design of modern housing. So I'm wondering if they've dodged meeting modern standards. I don't know if anyone could check that, but that does sound like something that would be, it would certainly reduce the impact on the watercourses locally by 3 or 4 tonnes per day, which would be something, definitely make a difference to the flooding or flow. Thank you.
I don't know whether, Sean, you want to respond to that?
I think just one thing that the applicant's agent, Sarah, made a point of, and certainly is in the documentation, the off in general that will be going to the wider area is green water runoff rate. So it's as if the houses aren't there effectively. I mean, I'm not a flood engineer or a flood expert, but effectively maintaining the status quo that exists at the moment, albeit there's a large area of concrete, the runway, that is actually going to be removed. I think those members that had the opportunity to see the site yesterday, I think it was clarified by the applicant's engineer that a lot of the actual runway itself that exists there is going to be dug up, all is going to be dug up. The concrete is going to be regraded and reused within the actual site itself. So very little will be going from the site to actually to a landfill or wherever for other uses. So I think taken as a whole, and the development full stop basically just ensures that any surface water that actually does leave the site, is leaving the site, or leaves the site, is at a rate that exists at the moment. So I think that is that is what we can achieve. I mean, there are some developments that can't achieve that. This does.
Absolutely, I've no objection to the surface water runoff. That is within the standard greenfield runoff state. I'm talking about grey water systems for the import of fresh water and the usage of water within the homes. I was thinking that the 110 litres per day sounds like they're not reusing any of their water.
Yes, just to come back on that point, Chair, if I could, through you. I mean, certainly we are starting to stray outside the actual parameter we've got in terms of the application in front of us. I mean, certainly something like that or requirement like that, I would more than happily impose on a full application or an outline, the principle of the development. It's difficult to ask for that at this stage, or nigh on impossible, bearing in mind we have got a very, very comprehensive scheme in front of us. The design is what it is. I mean, obviously members have reflected upon the quality of the design. It is difficult to ask for that, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Right, I'm going to make a couple of comments in a moment, but can I just ask our local members or any other members, as I said, this is likely to take 4 or 5 years, 6 years to build out, and it's possible there will be proposed amendments to the scheme during that time. At present, we're delegating authority to approve amendments to our planning officers during that period. Would any members wish to be consulted during that that period if, let's say, any significant amendments are proposed to the scheme during its lifetime? Would any local members like to have an input into that?
Sorry, Chair, through you, if I could, I'm just trying to get a little clarity for that. I mean, as is sometimes the case on housing development, if during the build-out of that proposal certain things change, technologies change, whatever the case may be, and for argument's sake, say 20 of the plots are going to be tweaked or removed or altered. If they are fundamentally altered, I mean, it's still, for example, a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom property, but externally looks different and the footprint looks different, that in itself will be subject to an application, a standalone planning application. Therefore, members will have the opportunity to be consulted upon, as with every other application we do deal with. So that catch-all does exist, Councillor.
Okay, it's just a definition of amendments that.
That would be amendments relating to what, say, here this evening in front of you, i.e. change of a window type or something of that nature. It wouldn't be a fundamental redesign of, say, 10 through 50 of the units.
Yeah, that's fair. Councillor Hughes.
Chair, yes, I'd just like to make a comment on that. We have a development in Tansley where the developer has been very effective at communication with the parish council and with local councillors, and it's gone down very well indeed. It's a quality development, and it's carried the parish council with it when the parish council can be quite argumentative on planning issues. So can I suggest to the developers that they actively market the scheme and keep the Ashbourne Town Council and the local district councillors and the county councillor involved in the design and progress, and keep them up to speed with what's going on. If there's a choice of materials, perhaps they'd like to be involved in seeing the materials and things like that. I think it would go down very well. Thank you.
Councillor Slack.
Just one final point, Chair. I'm very impressed by the runway area. I think it's showing a historic link to the past. I mean, this area it's a very historic area. Many planes flew from there to across to Germany in the Second World War. And as we come up to 80 years from the Second World War, I think it's great that they can look back and say that's the runway. You know, it won't be actually the runway, but it's where the runway was. And that's the runway where the planes took off to future generations. So I think it's great we got that historic past to look to. So I think it's good, very good indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Well, I think that's been a very, very good debate. What I would say is that I think, as colleagues have said, we very rarely get applications of this scale in the district, and I think it's acknowledged that when the original hybrid application was considered, we were perhaps a little naive as a council in the way we considered that, and we're now seeing that we're getting 300 new dwellings without any of the anticipated community infrastructure and other facilities that the community and I think the council expected at the time. So there's some lessons to be learnt on how we approach these types of applications in the future. And certainly I think it's incumbent on us to ensure that we do have a robust master plan in place sooner rather than later, certainly before we get any further planning applications. I would, though, commend the team behind the proposal for the way they've taken on board the reasons for the previous refusal. They've not taken the bats home. They've not appealed. They recognise the reasoning behind the previous refusal, and we have now a far improved scheme, and they've taken advice from external peers, which I think is always a good move on the part of applicants, and I'd commend all applicants to do that. I do think we're going to get a new place out of this scheme. It does have a distinctive character. I think, as colleagues have said, it may be an exclusive character, and there'll be different views on the merits or otherwise of that. But I do think, at last, we're going to get a place created here, which I think hopefully when it's built out, if all of us are still around, I think we'll go around and have a look at it, and I think we'll commend ourselves on this scheme. So thank you to the team for the effort you put into this, and thank you to colleagues for the contributions during the debate. We do now need to move to a vote. We have
if I could just say a few words as I reserve the right.
You wanted to come back, Peter. Apologies.
I did indeed, yes, thank you. Just to clarify, I think that this is in Yeldersley and Osmaston's patch, as it were, technically, so they should also be consulted. I was encouraged by what the agent said about in discharge of conditions stage, that there will be further scrutiny, and I would just lob in there what we heard about on the site visit yesterday. That is, there may be an issue with one of the pipes through one of the fields, which leads into a brook system. This is a very, very sensitive water system. It's not any old common watercourse. It feeds a series of lakes, the Shirley Lakes, and it needs to be treated with enormous respect. This doesn't end up in the Henmore. It goes the scenic route to the Trent. So that needs to be borne in mind. I would also echo the comments that other colleagues made about phasing. I was encouraged yesterday to be told that all the old runway was going to be torn up and regraded, and that implies, of course, that happens first. So presumably the green wedge, or what do we want to call it, will go first, and it would be lovely if that was at least planted out to some extent first, and I absolutely would like to see the play area there before first occupancy. So that will be excellent, and sounds like it might be going to happen anyway, and I do hope that the agent, reputable companies with a reputation to maintain, will be listening to what we're saying. And I would put to them that they have the chance to win over the local community if they could be generous in terms of the things which didn't happen, and to get those as soon as possible. Because it's less than 300, there's technically no requirement for sports provision. The local sports teams were very anxious to see something provided. 297 is less than 300. That's a shame. So there's opportunities for the developer to show that they care about Ashbourne as a community and what the entire community requires. And I hope that they will respond to that. So I will be voting for this. Well, I did propose it, didn't I? And would encourage others to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommendations, subject to reinforcing the conditions relating to the landscaping and the play area provision. Could we have all those in favour, please, show? Anybody want to vote against? Any abstentions? We have one abstention, so that is carried. Thank you, colleagues, and the application is approved. We're going to take a short adjournment for 10 minutes by way of a comfort break now. Can we be back by just before 10:02, please? move on to our second application. A different scale, but just important to the residents and the locality and the applicant. This is an application in Darley Dale, Hallmore Road at Plantation Cottages. It's an application, full application for the erection of 2 new dwelling houses. We have one speaker this evening. The agent, Richard Bradbury, is going to speak in favour of the application. Richard, if you'd like to come up and address the committee, you've got 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chair, members of... Is that working? Yeah. Good evening, Chair, members of committee. We are pleased that our proposals have officers' support. The report does, however, mention unresolved objections as a reason for bringing this application to the committee. These all were, however, all made in reference to our original proposal submitted in April. We amended the design and submitted fresh proposals in July, and to our knowledge, no objections have been made since. The revised scheme before you specifically addresses the comments from neighbours by substantially changing the height and appearance of from the roadside, i.e. the street scene. We reduced the height of both the ridge and the eaves, such that the roof levels step down evenly between the properties on either side. This reduced the number of bedrooms on the upper level from 4 to 2, thereby removing the need for the originally proposed front-facing dormers. So the result is a smaller house that appears truly single-storey from the roadside. To further harmonise the appearance with the street scene, we added a feature gable to the canopy over the front door, which replicates those on the existing houses to each side. With regard to materials, the use of local stone for walls, natural slate roofs rather than concrete tiles, and the timber-boarded canopy will further enhance the appearance. Neighbours had raised objection to parking arrangements and doubted that 3 cars could be parked on the drive. Please be assured that this is easily achievable. A standard parking bay is 2.4 metres wide. The overall width of the proposed driveways is 8.7 metres, so we are providing more than 3 spaces, or equivalent of, say, 2 child-friendly and accessibility spaces and 1 regular size space. The entrance from the road is 5 metres wide, so plenty of space for the cars to manoeuvre past each other. The Highway Authority asked for the drives to be at least 5 metres deep. They are in fact over 8 metres deep. I would like to draw the committee's attention to the lifetime homes considerations we have built into the plans by way of space for a lift and accessible bedroom and shower room at the entrance level. With regard to climate change mitigation, we itemised various proposals in the design statement, which I wasn't going to list again, but given the last debate, I think I might now. Air source heat pump, well, to be honest, I think they're just standard as required by building regs these days. We've been putting in ground source and air source for several years now. There is PV panels shown on the roof. The rear-facing roof is southwest facing, so that's ideal, really. They're not going to be seen from the roadside. They're on the back of the property. We've got opportunity for PV panels there. That can feed a car changing point, a car charging point. We always build with higher levels of insulation than standard, although the standards have crept up to meters. Ventilation and heat recovery, so we're controlling the ventilation because we build very airtight. Again, through building regulations, you've got the water efficiency requirements, and on the other side of the coin, there's a pergola feature on the lower floor, which is shading a patio and the southwest-facing windows to prevent overheating in summer. We can provide, I work in partnership with the company Oak and Stone EcoBuild, and we have been providing comfortable, super efficient homes such as this, including the one we completed 3 years ago just round the corner on Strathallan Close. We can provide technical details of these measures as per the recommended condition. With regard to the other recommended conditions, we are happy to comply with them all. Most are regarding landscape and ecology, BNG, etc., for which we've already put the action plans in place to implement. I'd like to conclude by saying that the applicants and ourselves are locally based. Gary and Sarah are first-time developers. Oakenstone and myself have been working in the area for over 30 years. We have a strong interest in providing well-designed, beautifully built homes. I've personally designed 3 houses within half a mile of this development, this site, and we hope the revised proposals satisfy the council and you'll be minded to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for that. Miles, or are you introducing this application? This is an application which was handled by our external consultants, Ashbourne Planning, but Miles Joyce is going to introduce it to us.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is an application for 2 dwelling houses at Plantation Cottage, Hallmore Road, Darley Dale. The recommendation is grant, subject to conditions, delegated to the Director of Place. The site is located on the south side of Hallmore Road, and if I may, I'll just show you the site there. The plot previously contained a single dwelling known as Plantation Cottage. It's to the north of the Darley Dale settlement boundary, as defined within the local plan and within the built form of Darley Hillside, as defined by the neighbourhood plan. The settlement is described within the Darley Dale's neighbourhood plan as having a strong relationship with its landscape setting with street alignment and terrace plots, allowing for long views across to the Peak District National Park. The site slopes steeply away from the road to the south. An area of hard standing remains as the access to the dwelling, which was destroyed in a fire in 2020. The site is largely derelict at present and overgrown, comprising only a small outbuilding with a pitched roof. There is an electrical substation on the northwest boundary. As stated, full plan permission is sought for the erection of 2 detached 2.5-storey maximum dwellings. And what we see here is the site before we go on, and then the site plan and where Plantation Cottage was and what is proposed, and separate access for each dwelling, with gardens to the rear of the properties. Design is for a single-storey appearance to the front when viewed from the street, and as buildings will be built into the hillside, as with neighbouring properties. The rear elevation is of 2.5-storey appearance, with dormer windows serving upper floor rooms. And as we can see there, where there's some landscaping, and you can see the site plan in more detail. If we go to the principle of development, Derbyshire Dales do not have or cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. And then consequently, paragraph 11 of the MPPF, the tilted balance as it's known, is engaged. Policy S2 as a second-tier assessment and S4, it would be acceptable in principle in this location, provided there's no clash with no other policies. And to say it's within the neighbourhood plan built area, but only 50 metres north of the local plan settlement boundary. The tilted balance is that the balance is any adverse impacts of the application would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies of the framework taken as a whole. That is the way you justify refusal. So it's not just a balance, it's actually a tilted balance away from the actual balance itself under paragraph 11 of the NPPF. There was an original scheme, and there was a revision, as the agent said, from a 2-storey appearance to reduce the scale to single-storey on the frontage in line with neighbourhood properties. And we can see the elevations there. Roof lights are included to provide natural light to the stairway and ensuite bathrooms on the first floor. The 2 dwellings are of the same design and laid out in the mirrored formats. There's 2.5-storey with dormers to the rear, as stated previously. To the rear, the design is modern with extensive glazing. To the lower ground floor, with access from living areas to the garden. The steeply pitched roof follows the line of the topography, sloping down to the garden with dormer windows serving the upper floor bedrooms. The materials proposed are locally quarried birch over stone and slate tiles, with composite and aluminium proposed for the door and window frames. The proposed materials respect the local character, and material samples should be required by condition to ensure their appearance is acceptable in context. The boundary wall to the frontage will be rebuilt using the same materials to give a finished appearance to the street frontage. Therefore, in design terms, it is considered that the scheme is in accordance with policies S4, PD1, PD5 of the adopted local plan and Darley Dale policies MP1, MP2, MP11 and MP12. In terms of residential amenity, with the building lines set back from the front elevations, the rear building line is clear of the 45-degree line from the neighboured properties' windows. It's therefore not considered a proposal would impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties around the application site due to these factors, plus the separation, distances and orientation. If we go quickly back, we can see perhaps a juxtaposition of the site with the adjoining properties. And in terms of other issues, highways and car parking, we've heard about the issue with the 3 off-street car parks. Sufficient provision, access and impacts are all demonstrated. There's no highway objections. There is going to be subject to a couple of conditions relating to installation of the manoeuvring areas, the car parking spaces, the visibility, preoccupation, and also to have the natural hedging and so on, green space to be not above a certain height to not impinge on visibility. In terms of trees, that's subject to an arboricultural impact assessment's recommendations. And finally, and not least, it's biodiversity. We do recommend, or rather the DWT recommend, conditions which we support to include features such as gaps in fencing for hedgehogs, provision of bird and bat boxes and insect bricks. Because it's a garden infill development, there will be a loss of biodiversity net gain on site. However, the Environment Act does provide for off-site gain. It's a mandatory 10% gain, and there is a pre-commencement condition related to this approval, so that if that is not honoured and building work starts, there would be a breach of that condition. The applicant has submitted a draft gain plan, which states that the B&G will be provided via the purchase of off-site habitat units from a registered provider. Just to show a few photos as we wrap up of the site, you can see it's fairly overgrown. You can see existing developments either side of the property as well, and a further view of the site and the hills further away. So to recap, it does pass a tilted balance. We do recommend plan permission be granted via standard conditions in terms of time to start development, accordance to the approved plans, limits to construction hours, no commencement event within a certain season regarding nesting birds, and then ecological conditions around lighting schemes, provision of hedgehog tunnels, site clearance, species enhancement plan, a couple of highway conditions as I've alluded to before, and works to be carried out with the arboricultural impact assessment and a tree protection condition relating to the construction phase. So I recommend, subject to those conditions, plan permission should be granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miles. I've got a question, but I'll come in later. I'll give the opportunity to members to ask questions first. Councillor Burton.
Apologies if members feel this is a perverse route to the question, but I will in a moment move that we grant consent, hopefully, for this. It's a sensitive site, and that's why I wanted a site visit. Now to the question. I'm always eager that we give fair play to our local town council. And Miles, thank you for your comments and how you've outlined this. But in response to Darley Dale Town Council, there's basically 3 things they're saying. Are 2 of them subjective, Miles? And could you just comment? I appreciated the outline from the applicant's agent, because that did concern me. And you're absolutely okay with the car parking?
A couple of things. We have the car parking standards. We have obviously the Highway Authority has been consulted. The issue in regards to streetscape could be design, scale. These are subjective matters of judgment. The third point concerns regarding the overall size of development on the available land. Well, yeah, it's also a subjective point. And if I just pop back, sorry, if I can come, have I got this? Yeah, sorry. You can see here these are the two, mirrored houses. That's the original Plantation Cottage. You can see it's much closer, to some extent, to Cloudswood. You'll see in there something which is in larger sites, albeit narrow, deeper and narrower sites, but set slightly back from, Cloudswood and Westway. They would have their own building line, but the juxtaposition there in terms of amenity and in terms of the living conditions, which I didn't touch upon for future occupiers, these are houses of good quality, good living conditions, plenty of private amenity space, garden space, and no materially adverse impact on the adjoining properties. And on the street scene, they've been reduced in scale to be more in keeping than the original scheme was. So it's our judgment that any objections have reasonably been overcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miles.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Really, the question is about biodiversity and whether it would be possible to take some of that on site if the driveway was made out of a material that would allow, for example, wild thyme to grow on the drive, or something like that, so that put a framework on the drive and the plants grow in between it.
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. It was a site which had a largish house upon it with a certain amount of hard standing. And in time, it's probably gained a bit of biodiversity simply by being overgrown and abandoned. There are limits when you're redeveloping a site, providing two houses. You are going to lose on site BNG. Biodiversity. You're going to lose it on site. So where do you get the 10% from? You won't be able to get that on site. It may be something to ask for, but in the end, the key thing is, do you get 10% somewhere or the other, which can be conditioned and monitored and managed. And if you can, we can ask, but ultimately, if they can demonstrate that 10% BNG gain, then the development is acceptable.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Buttle.
Thank you very much. I suppose first I was slightly concerned about the employment of outside consultants to start doing this stuff and Asbury planning. And I really like this report. It's really good. I really like the way it's broken up. It's really straightforward. It's definitely a good thing. There was a question about the layout, which was to do with the relevant planning history, which I did wonder if the relevant planning history applied to the previous house, the Plantation Cottage, rather than the actual cottage and planning thing that's going on here. Because if we've got an extension and the erection of a garden studio, neither of which appear anywhere on the plans that I've seen.
On that point, I believe it was demolished because it was fire damage in 2020, so everything precedes that, yes, apart from this application.
Yeah, so this application is the top one. It's not, we're in the relevant planning history part 4.
It's
the one that we're doing
one.
is the second one.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a bit uncertain which order we were doing these in. Great, that's good. And I had a question again about biodiversity net gain, and I wondered whether or not and this is the same place as David was coming from. I was wondering about the old green roof or what have you, the lawn roofs, or whether or not there was that sort of opportunity going to be had, and whether or not we would just say, no, we don't do that in Darley Dale.
Looking at that, you wouldn't. I think green roofs, you may struggle with that kind of design. It's that toss-up between having a green roof and also does it fit in with the area in terms of scale, design, use of materials. I think very much that the latter is the case. If it's about BNG, as I've said, some, if not all, would need to be produced off-site because of the nature of this kind of development. It's an infill. You're going to have more house and you're going to have 2 houses on it. from a site which has become overgrown in time. So there's always going to be a loss which cannot be reclaimed on the site itself.
Assuming there might be questions, but I'm very happy to second this if that's okay with David. It's obviously, thank you.
Councillor G.
Yeah, it looks a nice development. But when I first looked at the plan, though, it looked to me as if that site had more lend itself to one property rather than two, looking at the ones next to it. And the issue with regard to the parking, I completely believe the developer agent that you can fit 3 cars on it, but I'd like to see them all manoeuvre about and get on and off that tight extra. You know, because cars these days are much bigger. You know, when you measure the parking spaces, in some places, a parking space is quite narrow, but in other places it's wide with space. And, you know, 8 metres sounds a lot, but you put 3 modern big SUVs next to each other and you won't put them in. But I'm sure the developer is correct and I'm incorrect.
Well, I think it's simpler than that. I think County Highway Authority have no objections, and they are the authority in this regard.
Right, question was going to ask Miles, follows on from the questions from David Hughes and Neil Buttle. It's on the biodiversity net gain. We note that there's over 70% loss of biodiversity from this site as a result of the development. And the legislation, the Environment Act, is quite clear that there are 3 stages that we go through in biodiversity net gain. First of all, you look to provide it on site, and you do what you can to do that. Then you look to provide off-site in the locality. And the last resort is that you buy credit. Therefore, it could happen essentially anywhere in the country. That point was made by the Wildlife Trust, but the applicant here is simply proposing to go straight to stage 3 to buy an external credit from a registered provider. The report says that has been approved as a biodiversity net gain plan. Can I ask you whether you are happy that the applicant has gone through that process adequately in looking to see what PNG they can provide on site, then looking to see what they can provide in the locality, or whether they've just gone straight to stage 3 and for whatever reason we have approved that?
I'll take you back to paragraph 11 of the MPPF and the test you have to apply against all policies in the framework. It also applies to all policies in the local plan. And on top of that, I think there is this option. It may be optimal to have as much on site as possible and then to go via an off-site provision, rather than this option. However, in the round, we are satisfied that this passes the tilted balance. And as it passes the tilted balance, comfortably, in my view, that we should grant planning permission without delay. Thank you.
Right, just to press you on that, Miles, you accept that there is, within the government requirement, a hierarchy for BNG, which applicants are required to adhere to. A 3-stage hierarchy.
Yeah, I think you'll find the notes, it goes into this detail in the informative.
There is a 3-stage hierarchy.
I'll refer you again to the notes.
Okay. It would be helpful to have a yes or no. Is there a 3-stage hierarchy on the site, locality, and registered provider?
I think I've as good as said yes, so I'll say yes.
Right, we have colleagues who want to move the recommendation.
Chair, I'd like to formally move as one of the ward members that we support the officer recommendation as outlined with the conditions.
We have a seconder. Councillor Buttley, I think you were first.
Very happily. Yes.
Can I just round off then by simply saying, I mean, we've got a particular area that needs to be developed. It can't just carry on in the state and the condition it's in. Now, 35 odd years ago, it proved at the time, and still is in some ways, controversial, but, you know, the adjacent buildings around there are a mix, and this will be just part of that mix. And as rightly has been pointed out, it's going to provide 2 units of accommodation. So I do support this.
Neil, did you want to speak?
No, it just looks like it's just the right sort of thing in the right sort of area. No complaints whatsoever.
Right. Any further comments? David Hughes?
Chair, can I ask through you that we have a training session on biodiversity net gain, because I think it's an issue in this area, particularly with brownfield sites, and we know that brownfield sites apparently have a greater amount of biodiversity than greenfield sites, and therefore we need to understand fully what we are agreeing to or not agreeing, what we can agree to or not, or where there may be a dispute. Thank you.
Any further comments? No. Well, I don't feel able to fully support the application. I like the design, but as you gather from my question, in my opinion, the applicant does not follow the Environment Act hierarchy in terms of biodiversity net gain in looking to reinvest credits locally. They've gone straight to using an external provider, which I don't actually think is within the requirements of the legislation, let alone within the spirit of the biodiversity net gain. That's my personal opinion. We'll move to a vote. All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? Any abstentions? So that is carried and the application is approved. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to our final application for this evening. This is in Wirksworth, Water Lane in Wirksworth on the industrial estate down there. It's the change of use from what is currently a self-storage facility to a car showroom with some associated extensions on what is units 1 to 5 on the industrial estate there. And we have one speaker this evening, Darrell Barnes, who is the applicant. He's going to speak in favour of the application. Darrell, 5 minutes, please.
I'll keep it brief, Chair. You've had a long evening. Good evening, members. In the past 25 years, I've been grateful to receive the support of this committee a few times with several applications that I've had in Wirksworth with my businesses. And I was sat thinking the other day, and in the last 25 years, I've currently probably employed 70, 80 people in the local area, local people that are having local jobs and taking food home and to the families. And unfortunately, the self-storage, it doesn't turn over a lot. It's limited as what we can do with it. So if we can get members' permission tonight and we can make it into a bit more of a showroom, something that'd be a bit more beneficial business, we could tidy the area up, probably end up employing 4 or 5 people. And I think it personally to make better use of the site. I know there is a bit of a problem with parking on Water Lane. I can assure members that all parking will be kept on site, and hopefully that it should improve the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Who's introducing this? Sean Robson, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Chairman. If I draw members' attention to the presentation, this is the application site outlined in red. This is just the footprint of the current building. and effectively the building itself is going to be altered on the side and effectively the front, which I'll come on to the plan in a moment. So effectively this is the existing building, as you can see in front of you. Members that took the opportunity, or had the opportunity yesterday to see the site, will be aware of the site and the surrounding area. A modern built building. Sorry. So effectively the element in the middle of this, sorry, come back. The area in the middle of this slide, this second drawing down, shows the existing building. So effectively you've got the flanks on either side, for want of a better way, to extend it, to actually to move the development away from the self-storage to, as the applicant has already said, the car showroom and sales area. So effectively improving the site and creating a betterment for the site and the surrounding area. Just some photographs of the existing site, the existing building. And this shows that one of the areas where the extension or projection of the roof through to create that extension on the side is going to go. There are no updates, Chair, on the actual application, and I'd just like to hope the members recommend it as per the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Questions from members, please. Just have a question, Roger.
Just a quick one to ask if the swimming pool, which is next door, were they one of the consultees?
They, so just bear with me. Yes, they were, but there's also a site notice carried out as well, so the surrounding area. I mean, effective legislation is either a letter or site notice. You don't have to do both, as long as you've done one of those, which we have done both in this instance.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? No, we'll go into a debate then. We have a recommendation to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in section 8. Would anyone like to move that recommendation or anything else? Councillor Burton. To speak, David? No. Councillor Hughes?
I'll second.
Do you want to say anything, David?
I think this seems a very reasonable change of use for an industrial site, and if parking can be kept on site, then it should be fine. Thank you.
Any further contributions? Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's a good alternative to self-storage. I think it'll improve the area, it'll bring more people in, and it should be a reasonable profit business and employ people. So when it's causing no problem and employing people, it's right, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any further comments? Okay, we'll move to a vote. We have moved and seconded to approve the application. All those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. So, Darrell, you'll be pleased to hear your application has been approved. We'll move on to our last agenda item. That's item 6. This is the report on the appeals. You'll note that there's just one appeal has been determined since we last had this report, and we'll see that that appeal has been dismissed. I don't know whether Sean or Marty want to make any comment on this report, or before we open it up.
No, Chair.
Any questions from colleagues? David?
Just a couple of questions, please, Chair. In terms of the White House, Church Road, Churchtown, I'm sure I've had some information to say their appeal's been dismissed.
Yes, through you, Chair. That may well be the case. I'll just have to check in terms of if we received that. I mean, at the time of this going to publication or printing, that was the current representation. I mean, that would probably, if that has happened, it probably may well have been. That will be reflected in the, not Thursday evening, but January's committee.
Just a comment concerning land to the east of Wheatley Road, Two Dales. Members took time to visit that site, and there was a lot of officer time put into that application. But the day we had the site visit, I'm led to believe the applicant then withdrew the application. Is that correct, Sean?
I believe that is the case, Councillor. I mean, I'd have to look into it.
It's just really an expression of, I don't know what the word is, but it just seemed to me that a lot of time and money was wasted at that point. And is there no way that you can sort of, or do we have no way of surcharging? When, you know, there'd been a big build-up, town council had gone through it, lots of residents had been to meetings and things. It comes to us, we go out and visit the site, and then for some strange reason on the, you know, the day before, it's then just withdrawn. It seems ludicrous.
Just to go back through your chair to the answer to that question, I mean, no, there is no surcharge any authority or any legislation allows for, I'm afraid. So unfortunately, whilst it's not ideal, it does happen quite frequently.
May I just clarify on that one? So the application that's been withdrawn is not the same one that's being appealed, is it? No.
There is still the appeal that's ongoing, but the actual application itself, which was effectively to try and address the refusal, that was the one that was withdrawn. Yeah.
Would someone like to move receipt of this report? Councillor Dobbs. Second, Councillor Hughes. You may indeed.
Chair, can I just ask that in the future reports, all of the different abbreviations are listed at the bottom of the page? Because the hearing here isn't listed, and neither is WREP. I assume WREP is the same as WR. And hearing, is that informal hearing, or is that?
WREP is written representation. It should be WR.
Hearing is here is on.
That is an informal hearing, but I can actually make sure that's actually sticks to the abbreviations.
And house as well on the other page, which is presumably householders.
Householder, yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I was just, it's just being pedantic. I'm sorry.
It's been moved and seconded that we receive this report with that pedantic note by our... All those in favour, please show. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention this evening. Only 3 applications, but I think we devoted the right amount of time to each of them. So thank you for that, and have a safe journey home. And we'll meet again on Thursday.